Hello everyone and welcome back. Now today is a bit of a request. So a few of you have asked me about different eyeshadow textures and how to make a decision on which one to use. Now it's difficult enough to know what eye colours suit you, but when it comes to textures, that's a whole different learning curve as well. So I'm going to get into that now, okay? When trying to explain textures of shadows, I've actually come up with a bit of a visual for you. So I would like you to try and think about fabrics. So if you think of a matte fabric, you could think of something like jogging suit material, or even wool. So it's a really dense fabric. It's completely opaque. And if you were to rub the fabric together, it wouldn't glide. It would be quite rough in texture. Now if you think about that in eyeshadow form, so you're getting a completely opaque eyeshadow. When you rub it together, it's quite rough. So when you're talking about eyeshadow, that means it's a little bit trickier to blend. It's not smooth, it doesn't glide. Some are much better than others, of course, but it's the most difficult texture of shadow to blend. Next up, we're looking at something like, it doesn't really matter how it's described. Some companies describe it in different ways. I would say like a velvet texture. So if you imagine a velvet fabric, it does reflect a little bit of light, but it's still very opaque. And when you rub it together, there's a bit more smoothness there. So think of that as a shadow. It's still very opaque, it's still loaded with pigment, but when you go to blend, it's a little bit easier than a matte, but it's not the easiest. Okay, next up, think of a satin fabric, a little bit more opaque, a little bit more transparency there, very silky, so it glides. So if you think of the material gliding, the same goes for the shadow. When you pick up your brush and you glide a satin shadow, it's exactly how it blends on your eye. Totally glides, reflects the light. So yeah, just easier to use. And then last up, we've got a frost. A frost is, if you could think a bit of fabric with maybe sequins on it, or little diamantes or beads, but they all reflect the light, so it's quite bright. Great for certain circumstances, but not all round use. Is the same way as you wouldn't walk out, I guess, with a sparkly dress on every day of the week. The texture could be described as quite rough. It's not completely smooth because there's so many particles of light reflective particles in it, but very, very easy to apply. So I hope that helps, and I'm going to show you a little demo of how you would use them and why you would make your selection. So I've got two palettes here. I've got the Modern Renaissance palette by Anastasia Beverley Hills. Now this is there's frosted shadows, there's some satin shadows, and of course matte shadows. This one here is probably an easier one for you to visually see. This is the Vieve palette. Now these two are more frosted, as is that, and the rest are matte shadows. And once you kind of understand why you put them where, you're probably never going to struggle again. Well, that's the hope. So the first thing I would do is I would think about doing the background of your eye, which is the transition colour. And here you're looking for a colour that's as near to your skin colour as you can, or a little bit warmer, or a little bit pinker, but you don't want to go drastically different. So you're not going to put greys here, or you're not going to put colours there. You're not going to blue or green or purple there. You're going to put warm taupes or peaches or soft pinks. Anything that kind of mimics a skin colour, because that's your blending shade. That's what a transition shade is. It means that anything else you're using blends into that and makes it look seamless because it's similar to your skin colour. And once you've learned that tip, honestly, eyeshadow application becomes much more simple. So I would use that first, and the kind of texture I'd look for in that would be probably like a velvety texture would probably be best. I don't want something shiny and I don't want something matte. I want something that just glides easily on the brush and is easy for your matte colours to blend into if you're going to use them. So I am going to suggest today one of these two, probably this one. Yeah, quite a warm colour, but not too warm that's going to be totally obvious on my eyes. So I'm taking a blending brush. Okay, so it's a tapered brush, absolutely perfect for doing this. And I'm taking my warm shade. I'm going to apply the transition colour. Okay, so it's above the crease line, under the brow bone. Now, because this is a velvety texture, these aren't, you're not going to buy a shadow and it's going to describe as a velvety texture. No, some do, some don't. Some brands do. I think MAC tell you, or used to tell you, what the texture of the shadow was. I'm not sure they do it anymore. But you use your eyes to see that. Once you've noticed a couple, you can't really go wrong, and you don't have to get it spot on. You just kind of roughly have to know. Like, think of a frosted shadow being one end of the spectrum and matte being at the other. Matte being the most difficult to blend, and satin being the most kind of gliding kind of shadow. Okay. And obviously, like doing a transition shade, I don't want to reflect any light. I just want it to blend. Therefore, I wouldn't pick up a satin or a frost. And you know, that's kind of it. That is all you need for your transition colour. Well, you don't have to be too perfect with this. Also, you don't have to do it first. You can do it last. I do either or. It really doesn't matter. I think this is quite a nice way for you to get used to the textures though. Now, if you don't follow my page on Facebook, I have a page, it's a group actually, called Flaming 40s Plus, and it's for girls over 40 who want to learn some makeup tips, skincare, basically anything, or, you know, even just mum stuff, house stuff, clothes, whatever you want to talk about. But this this request came through that, and I'm doing by the time you've seen this, which will be Sunday, I'll have already done my live, which is tonight, so this is really makeup for that. Okay, so that's my transition colour on. The only time I would really use matte would be the very, very outer corners. Now, the benefit of matte, because it's difficult to use, is that it's very, very hard wearing. So densely pigmented that once it's on, it doesn't budge, and that's the beauty of it. It's the trickiest shadow to work with. So you're going to get a much smaller brush, this one here, which is your pencil brush. It's like a really small version of a blending brush, and I'm going to take a shade from the Vieve palette, which is called Delicious, and it's a matte shade. It's a warm brown, and I am going to use that in the outer corners. And what this does is adds depth to your look. So transition shade in its own is a little bit wishy-washy, but this is going to give your eyes more definition and more shape. Okay, that's the first step in application. Really just place it on. Your blending brush does the work. Okay, same brush as before. What this does is it blends into the transition colour and just makes a much more seamless application. Rather than being dark and then the very light colour of your skin, there's a kind of midway point there which blends it all together. Okay, it's not perfectly blended at this stage, but I don't expect it to be. That comes later. It's Thursday today. It's the second last day of homeschooling, so I can't tell you how relieved I feel. It's been a long process. Okay, Okay, so you take your time with matte. It will blend, but it does take time, and having good brushes is perfect. See these little flat brushes you get for shadow? They're no good for a look like this. Not for using matte. They're for placing the colour on to the lid. They're not for blending it. So you do need to get yourself a blending brush. I did a video before on what brushes to use, so I'll link it. And you can jump across to that one and see my recommendations. I don't think you need to spend a fortune in brushes, you really don't. You need maybe 3 for your eyes. That's it, that's all you need. Okay, so I've got my velvety textured shadow on, and I've got my matte in the outer corners. So now I am going to get a shimmery shadow, frosted shadow, whatever you want to call it, which was from the Vieve palette, and I'm going to use the pale kind of yellowy gold, and I'm going to put it right in my lid. Now these are super glidey, they're great. They can also fall a little bit, they can be more crumbly to touch, I guess, but the beauty of these is that these, more than any other shadow texture, reflect the light completely, especially a shade of gold. That's the most reflective colour. So if you put it in an area of your eye like your lid or your brow bone, that is going to bounce the light forward, therefore making the lid space look a lot bigger. So I'll do one eye and one without and see the difference. One with. You can just see how it's reflecting the light on the lid. Okay, and also great for the brow bone, for highlighting. And the inner corners. Okay. Now for liner, I would use matte, because matte is always going to stay put longer than any other type of shadow for lining, especially along the top. And now if you wet it, it grips even more, and you get a much more dense, solid, dark liner from it. If you want a softer look underneath, then definitely use a satin shadow. So it's got a little bit more light reflective particles than a matte, but it is going to stay put. But the beauty of it is it will glide a little bit better. It'll be much easier for you to blend. Sometimes doing a pencil first and then putting liner shadow over it helps as well. So today I think I will do a little liner, and then we'll go over it with some powder. Think of your liner like an undercoat, that's what it's like. It's the texture of it's like sticky, because it's a pencil, kind of sticky. And then you put your shadow on top and it grips to it. That's what makes it stay. So just for change, I'm going to do underliner first. Why not? And I'm going to use, I think I might use this one. Like a warm burgundy shade. And that's from the Anastasia Beverly Hills palette, the Modern Renaissance. Okay, so smaller brush. Great colour for green eyes, but you're getting a soft, diffused line there, it's not too harsh. I can blend it out as much as you want to. And then I'm going to connect it to the upper portion of my eye. Blend. With those two blended together, I feel like I'm going to need a third shade just to condense them a little bit. One's a bit kind of, it's okay, but it looks like two colours kind of lying side by side, but I want to kind of mix them together a little bit. So I would use my pencil brush again and get a darker shade. I'm going to use a black, which is completely matte. And add it into the corner. Okay, let's do some upper liner. Again, I'm going to go in with the matte black. And it's just dry because I don't want to make it too dark. All that's really left to do on this side is just to clean up underneath and mascara. Wouldn't it be great if you just had one eye? You could do an absolute masterpiece in one eye. It's getting the other one to be the same that's the tricky part. Okay. Cyclops. Trusty concealer to hide your little smudgy bits. Okay, so now when I get to this part of the application, I like to look, see what I've done and see where I can tweak it to make it look a bit better. And I always tend to do the same thing, I add more transition. So here we go with that. Okay. And in fact, I might do a little bit under and make it a little bit more smudgy. Similar transition shade. Now that's again a satiny type of texture of shadow, so it glides so much easier than a matte. And to me that just balances it out a little bit. You have to start, put a couple of bits in place, and then to start to build up the top and bottom until you're happy with the balance. And that takes a bit of fiddling around, but and another thing, if I find that I'm using matte shadows and I make a mistake, using a satin or a velvety textured shadow hides mistakes beautifully. For instance, say you have done some matte black in the outer corner and you just can't get it to blend. I would take my blending brush and a softer shadow, like say you've used black matte in the corner, take a dark brown which is velvety in texture and blend it slightly into it, and all it does is smudge out the rough edges. It's a trick I always do when I'm working. You maybe have 6 bridesmaids to do and you're under pressure for time and not everything's perfectly straight. Get a velvety shadow, smudge it into the dark colours, and it just makes it seamless. So a lot of it is actually learning how to fix mistakes. Yeah, I quite like that because I've added a little bit of a kind of burgundy, purpley kind of, I suppose a kind of eggplant colour. To me it just doesn't look as flat and boring, it just gives it a wee bit of lift. Makes it a little bit more interesting to look at. I always top up with powder under the eyes, and I'm going to finish with a lovely lippy that I've got, Cocoa Liner by Bobbi Brown. I told you last week I'd have my teeth fixed this week. Unfortunately that's not the case. I've still got, I'll probably be another 4 weeks until they're completely fixed. I'm getting an implant in the front 2 teeth, so you'll always find that I'm smiling with my mouth shut, which is awkward. I had so many problems with the root of one of these teeth that I just couldn't take it anymore, so implant it was. It's a long process. It'll be worth it, but it's been long. Okay. And finishing off with Beauty Pie lipstick. It smells gorgeous. I've been wearing this a lot recently. It's a nude, but it's not too flat and it's not too matte, so it's just got a wee bit more lift. Reflects the light a little bit, so I just think it's a little bit kinder. So I hope you've liked this look, and I hope it's helped you work out the difference between shadow textures. Not easy, but just remember, the darker and the drier or the flatter it looks, the more difficult it is to blend, and anything that bounces the light and is a wee bit more sheer to texture is the easiest to blend. It really is as simple as that. If you haven't subscribed, please do so and press the bell button, and that means you'll be notified anytime I post a new video, and I will see you next week. Again, anything you want to comment, please ask below, and I'll list all the products I've used, and I will see you next week. Bye!